welcome back to Stream 2 of Area Effect. I'm your host, Jade Valkyrie, and next we have the panel, What I Wish I Knew. This entire panel is dedicated to help aspiring gaming professionals get insight on the industry. All of our panelists have been in the industry for a while and want to help the next wave of gaming professionals. Have burning questions about how to start your career? We do have some questions on deck, but you can also ask your questions for this Q&A session to be answered at the end of the panel by typing in !question into the Twitch chat, which will pop up a form for you to submit your questions. Those in Discord can be on the lookout for this form in the panel announcement channel. So, without further ado, let's get started. Can each of you give a summary of who you are, what company you work for, and your role? And we can start off with James.
Oh, hi. Hello, everyone. My name is James Chan. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Brace Yourself Games. I've been in the industry since the late 90s, and I started out my career as a software engineer. I've worked on PC, CD-ROM, Game Boy Advance, and then all the console generations up to the current console generation. And yeah, I've been around a bit. Now I do a lot of operational things, trying to make the company be more successful as a actual company rather than mostly focusing on engineering anymore. But I tend to build a lot of engineering around making companies more productive. So.
And next, Marty.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Marty Wong. I've been in the industry for around 6-ish years, maybe now. I did some indie game work out in New York, and eventually found myself working at 343 Industries for a little bit. And now I'm currently a technical designer at Studio Wildcard. Currently working on Ark Survival Evolved and working on new DLC for that.
Perfect. And last but not least, Zach.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Zachary Merman. I'm a software engineer at Athenoscope. As a company, we build, we have AI that generates clips from gameplay streams. Right now, I'm working on leading our mobile effort. So hopefully we're pre-launch right now. So hopefully you'll see more of that soon down the road.
Perfect. So, of course, as most panels about how to get into the industry, we have to ask you all, how did you get into the industry? And we can start off with Zachary for this one.
Yeah, so when I was a student, I actually wasn't really interested in games initially. I went to UC Berkeley studying EE and computer science. My real interest was in cybersecurity actually at the time. And my sophomore year, end of my sophomore year, I got an internship at a big security firm and absolutely hated it. It was a great company, not for me. And at that point, I basically had to ask myself, like, what am I going to do? Right? This thing that I've been planning to do for so long, is clearly not for me. At the time also, as a student, I kind of built games for fun as a hobby. I never really thought of it as a career, but my friends basically convinced me to say, like, hey, you already do this, right? You have the skills. So I applied for a few companies and got hired by Zynga to work as a full stack engineer on their on Zynga Poker. So that's more or less how I got into the industry.
Amazing. And James?
Oh, I apologize if there's an unfortunate noise here, but I think the building just decided to start cleaning the hallways at this point.
Of course. But I'm sure I was like, they're like, oh, this guy's got a panel. Let's do it now.
Yep.
For sure.
Okay, so I've been in the game industry as long as I can remember. It was my first job ever, but I had never imagined I would even be in the industry when I was, growing up and working. I ended up meeting my first boss like at a coffee shop when I overheard people talking about like IT related things, and I was like, oh yeah, well that's what I'm doing, so like I can I can, help you solve your problem. And he's like, well, why don't you, come up to the office in like tomorrow and let me show you the problem. And I'm like, sure, yeah, happy to fix that. And then that's realistically how it happened. And then I started doing more and more things. Like I always wanted a career in IT, but IT became games somewhere around that time. And yeah, and then my previous managers have always started pushing me towards like, you probably shouldn't stay in IT forever. Go become a software engineer. And that's when I started moving into being a software engineer. And then later, when I was trying to doing like you know how every American university student will usually do their sophomore year and go, oh my god, this is the wrong major I picked. So
Yeah.
that's and what it ended up doing. And Voldy Way from Way Forward said like, go do something that you think will be more useful. And I wanted to focus on like psychology and organization development, because most of us that start becoming managers will always end up having this problem where you have a team to manage and you have absolutely no clue how to manage that team. Then I became an engineering manager, and then after a certain amount of years, then I decided it was better for me to focus on the entire company rather than just the engineering management. That's how I got here.
And last but not least, Marty.
Yeah, so sometime after I dropped out of high school, I was working like random retail jobs. I ended up working at a casino for a little bit, and then at some point I just kind of, I don't know, got complacent, or it was just like, and that really bothered me. It was like I don't think I can be here for like another 10 years and just still be happy. So I wanted to move into something more aligned with my interests, and obviously I played a lot of video games at the time. Um, and then I started watching a bunch of extra credits videos, and that really exposed me over to like the development side of things and kind of a different view on video games in general. And then I started investigating how do I get more involved into that, and started learning just I started learning Python and Code Academy just on my own time, um, and just trying to move towards to be like having a more technical skill set or having some kind of marketable skill set. Did some more research. Went to Becker College in Worcester, Massachusetts, for a little bit. Dropped out of that as well, and then eventually got a job at a small indie company out in New York, and that's how I got my start.
That's really awesome. And since it seems that all of you didn't go to college for esports or didn't attend college, do you think that going into college specifically for gaming would have helped you in your career path, or do you think that it would have just been about the same?
So personally, I don't regret going to college. I regret paying for college. um,
Yeah, there we go.
but it was definitely a positive experience, but not in the traditional sense. Like I don't think I got I think I don't personally didn't get a whole lot of academic education out of it. Like I didn't actually learn a lot of the hard skills that I know today from college. Like, and to be completely honest, like everything you need to know about game development is for free online. You could basically search up any tutorial you want for art, sound design, programming. You can just look it up online. So I didn't actually learn too much while I was at college, but it was I definitely met a lot of the people that got me where I am today, and got to work on a lot of cool stuff while I was in college. So it's kind of a, if you need it, to me, for um, if you're the kind of person who needs some kind of outside motivation to work on things, or to have someone else like help you have someone else tell you what to do to get to someplace. I think college helps a lot. But I think for people who are intrinsically motivated and can like really good self starters, I think college isn't really needed for that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And one of the really important things about getting any job ever actually is just having the skills ahead of time, right? Or having some of the base skills you need ahead of time. So for me, I didn't go to college specifically for games. In fact, at the time in the entire university, there was probably one game specific class. But I was a CS student, right? And those skills are definitely useful. Definitely were very useful when going into my first career. Every game that's online is going to need an authentication service, for example. And an authentication service isn't specific to games. It's any online service at all needs one, right? So you can get the skills you need from non-gaming specific courses, or like Marty said, it's online for free, right? You have to be motivated enough to find it and really dig into what you need to get your first job or maybe your next job. But it's definitely useful going to college, getting CS or getting any background knowledge, but not necessary, I would say.
And James, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think university is important, but not for the same reasons that everybody thinks it's going to be. And a lot of it is like related to soft skills. Like the hard skills, I agree with, both these very talented gentlemen here that you can get those skills if you are so motivated. Some of the best programmers I know actually didn't even own a computer until they went to university and decided to choose computer science as a major, and that's when they were first introduced to a computer. It's kind of interesting, like the generational divide there. Um, so yes, you can learn a lot of the hard skills on your own if you're so motivated. If you need a little bit of guidance, then, with all the stuff online now, Code Academy, whatever, it really gives you a lot of those things. The soft skills it does teach you are, I think, super important though, which is working in a team. Being able to collaboratively work with other people to get a project done. Um, and later in life, uh, unfortunately, it's not whether I want to recommend a particular way or not. Unfortunately, the world will judge you a lot of the times on whether you do have one or not, because it's I don't know if you ever heard of the term like signaling, but it's basically employers will look to see if the read on it, for me, at least for a lot of employers, is whether someone is going to have the tenacity to stick out 4 years of something what you think is very useless and very uncomfortable, uh, that you can tough it out to do it, because nobody really likes university. It's dumb. Um, but you're telling people that, yeah, I can grin and bear it for that long. Um, and you will have to face that hurdle later, to convince a potential employer of why that wasn't important, and that's just the thing. Also, I've had plenty of amazing programmers that skipped school altogether and are doing extremely well, but depending on what your life choices are, and this is really weird, but it has to do with mobility. If you in your future thought about wanting to go to a different country and become a software engineer there, these countries are going to have educational requirements for you to pass and get your work visa somewhere else. So if you even wanted to come to Canada or Europe, it is very hard if you don't have university degree. And this is the craziest thing to me that I think like makes no sense whatsoever, is that in most countries, you will require 10 years of working experience to equal a 4-year college graduate degree, which I can tell you that almost everybody here learned way more in their first year of actually working than 4 years of university. So, but this is not something I can control, right? This is the government. A lot of governments will say you need 10 years of work experience to equal 1 bachelor's degree. And those are my, particular reasons of why you may want to look at whether you want to complete that degree or not.
Those are definitely choices that some people are going to have to make outweigh the pros and the cons of the two, because like you said, this college is commitment test, and as personally a person who is about to finish college and with a theater degree of all things, it is definitely a tough way to go. So our next question is submitted, and it is asking, what do you recommend for someone starting out in the gaming industry but might not be in the role that they want to be in? How can that person pivot? Like maybe starting off in like QA or test position, but they really want to be a designer or a producer. Are there ways to pivot, like what role that you are in?
So that's like the most common scenario that I've seen is someone, and it just so happens to be someone from QA wants to go into like design or programming. So the way that I've seen it is that person, whoever's in whatever discipline, starts studying up on their own time, like on whatever discipline that they want to jump into, whether it's design, whether it's programming, and study can obviously mean like a bunch of different things, whether or not you're just like actually attending classes, whether you're just doing your own projects or self projects. And the common way that I've seen it is that whenever you're at a company, you start talking to the people who are in that department that you want to, and you start talking to them, even if it's like casual and like obviously you don't want to make it like very like career designs, like, hey, can you get me a design, can you get me a design job?
Just get us some casual insider information,
but it's mostly just like just talking to them and understanding what their work is and understanding how they got there, and some people have opportunities to demonstrate that their other side of their skills. For example, if you're in QA, but if you talk to a designer and it's like, hey, I have some feedback about this, what do you think about this? And then you have a chance to showcase that other side of you. And it doesn't have to be directly within your own company, but that does definitely make it easier from what I've seen. But other than that, it's kind of, if you're planning to go to a different company for that discipline, I've seen you just need to start building a portfolio on like, here's the stuff that I've built in a design role, or here's the stuff that I've built in a programming role. And once you have that portfolio built up, you can leverage your current position on like, here's what I've seen from this side, and here's, as a QA tester, here's how I interact with designers, and here are some of the things that I see, or here are some of the things that I value in when I'm working with a good designer. And so start building up that skill set and in your own time, and then start branching out and reaching out to people in that field, and start applying and build a portfolio.
And Zachary, do you have any thoughts on that? I noticed that you said that you were doing the cybersecurity, and now you're doing gameplay. Like, how did that transition?
Yeah. So, well, for me as an engineer, right, the base level skills were still the same. So it's a little bit different than going like QA to engineering or QA to design. But transferring roles is actually pretty similar to getting your first job in a new role, in the sense of, no one's going to hire you if you don't have the base level skills you need, right? So building skills on your own time is definitely something useful. Doing side projects. If you want to be a designer, design games, right? If you want to be a gameplay engineer, build games. If you're already in a game company in a different role, you have a leg up, and you have people you can ask for advice, right? Or you can have people review your code or review your designs, and they'll just kind of do it socially. So focusing on your own time to really build up the skills necessary are definitely useful. And then, there's some tracks where, I've worked with a few QA people in QA who've gone to producer, and those skills are actually the hard skills are actually pretty similar there. So there's potential for, instead of just going from one career to another, right? You can work. You can almost get a promotion to a different role depending on what you're looking at.
And James, anything to add on that?
Not really. Both Zach and Marty have pointed out the very common career paths for someone very new in the industry. You start in QA. Production is usually a lot of place people go because the progression from QA to QA lead, when you start understanding the entire development process of a game, it leads you very easily to go to assistant producer, and you go up that production path because you're basically managing time and people. Marty is also extremely correct when you have to develop those, hard skills for design and engineering, being able to write code on your own time on the side, and then show your friends who are programmers at work, and you're like, hey, I'm working on this, and if it's good, and you take enough constructive criticism and you keep on making that better, someone is going to look at it and go, why don't you try out the software engineering job for a bit? Because software engineering is there's a lack of software engineers in the industry in general, so we are always willing to try and give people their shot. In almost any company that I've worked at, we were always happy to progress, people and move them forward in their careers. Every good manager is going to want to do that, or at least from my perspective, every good manager is always preparing for you to graduate out under their management. That is what we're supposed to do.
That is some sound advice. And speaking of advice, another chat question is, what is the best advice that you ever received? And since you all have been in the industry so long, let's just put a caveat. What are some of the best advice? It doesn't have to be the best.
Best advice I'd ever received was from my old mentor Monty Sharma, out in Becker College. Get out of the student mindset. And so this was to me at the time when I was still a student, going to college, and I was kind of going through the Becker College has like an interactive media like course where it's kind of focused on games and stuff like that. I was doing the courses. I was like, okay, this is cool and stuff like that. I didn't really understand what it meant at first, but getting out of the student mindset, you kind of most people go through 12 years of schooling and are taught in this way of like, I need to do this thing and I'm going to get a grade for it. And a teacher gave me this homework. I'm going to complete this homework. But that's not how real life works. And that's especially not how games work. Whenever you join a company or when you apply to a company, there's whenever you're making a game, there's nobody that's going to tell you, hey, you got an A on this programming feature, or you completed your design thing on time, or it's at some point you have to develop that autonomy to judge your own work and to decide what to do next. And that's all just personal decisions. Like even I'm just like an individual contributor over at Studio Wildcard. But most of my work is like self-driven, of like I feel comfortable going to my lead and saying like, hey, I think this character should be built like this, or here are some of the programming things that I see. And getting out of that student mindset of I need to do this and then I'll get this thing out of it, was how I kind of became the developer I am today, and helped me be a lot more self-motivated and autonomous.
Thank you. Yeah, and getting that initiative going and just being like, this is what I want to do and I'm going to chase it because this is the job setting. James?
I think The best advice I ever got was to take some risk. It's like when you first start your career, I think you're, as Marty said, you're in that student mindset and you're being fed things to do, and it takes, a bit of guts or a bit of risk to now start asking people and say, hey, I really want to do this, can I do this instead? I think it is a better idea. You're risking here is like, the fact that you might get shot down because it's not the greatest idea, but you need to speak up and take those risks, and that applies all the way up the chain. I always I sometimes ask people, like, what do you really want out of life? Do you want to be comfortable, or do you want to be stinking rich? And then someone said to me that they want their butlers to have butlers. So the answer for me at that point when I told them was like, you're never going to do it working for somebody else. Like, you have to start your own thing and you have to do it if you want to be stinking rich. If you just want to be filthy rich, you could probably work in a company and be an employee all the way up. But to get the stinking level, unlikely as a employee. So be comfortable with risk.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of another angle, one of the pieces of advice that really stood out to me, and this is kind of another angle on what Marty had talked about, is one of the most important things you can do just in general in your life is to build trust. And it's especially useful early, just in your entire career, right? Where when the people around you trust you, you can go against the grain and they'll know it's coming from a good place, and they'll know that, maybe there's a shred of truth as opposed to just naysaying all the time. Or, people want to give you more responsibility, right? If you can completely handle all of your responsibilities, maybe that's an opportunity for promotion, right? And there's actually, this piece of advice actually came with a formula for building trust, especially early on, which is when you get a task, you say you're going to do it, then you say how you're going to do it, then you do it, then you say how you did it, and then you say you did it. Right. And if you repeat that enough, you can start taking away steps because, when someone gives you a task, they know you'll do it well. And eventually, once that gets repeated enough, as an IC, as an individual contributor especially, that's how you build trust, and that's how you gain more responsibility and more opportunity for that matter.
Some advice. And speaking of trust, a lot of people say that networking is a form of building trust and building those connections. So our chat is asking, what are some of the best events, or I guess at this point of time, best strategies online to network in an organic way? Keyword organic.
Oh, that's a tough one. I constantly get the stray recruiters hitting me up on LinkedIn. I don't know if I consider that organic, but I definitely read a lot of them. So I have talked to some connections of connections. One thing that me personally will get me to like read your email or something like that is like, hey, I know this person and you know this person on LinkedIn. Like, I just wanted to see if you have a chance to talk. Honestly, just like sending out a message to anybody who seems interesting to you, like yeah, you might have to creep on their LinkedIn or something like that, but um,
It's for a good cause.
yeah. But I've seen plenty of I got an email from somebody who I've never met but worked at a company that I used to work for and was also went to the same college and was like acquainted with like some of the same circle. Just like sent me a message like out of the blue and it's like, hey, I saw you here and I know you used to work for this company. Are you going out to GDC? We should chat sometime, right? And like that's like an organic way to like extend your network or just start talking to people. Last year I would have said go to GDC, but it's probably a little tough right now. But that's the most successful way that I've seen.
Yeah, conferences are incredible, and I miss all the conferences this year. But just getting second degree connections online or in person are fantastic, and just showing interest in what the other person is doing is one of the best ways to start conversations. Right. If somebody's built an algorithm that makes trees really awesome in games, ask them about trees. Right. Just whatever they're doing, show a lot of interest. And actually, one of the things that I've seen, one of the interns at Athenascope did, is he sent an email saying like, "Hey, I did a bunch of research. It's really useful for your company might be interested in my research. Like, let's talk." Right. That he provided immediate value to our company, and we would have been crazy to say like, "Oh no, we're not interested." Right. And like Marty said, once you get into the industry, once you have a few years behind your back, you're going to get recruiting emails pretty much all the time, at least in my experience. So my second job when I left Zynga was through a recruiter sent me a message on LinkedIn like, "Hey, do you want to start interviewing for this company?" It got me past the resume screen. So once you have a few years behind your back, you're going to get people messaging you like, "Hey, do you want to interview?" at basically anywhere.
I want to say that despite being like, I've seen the industry like grow like over many years, but interestingly enough, it is still at a size where almost everybody knows everybody, and we're pretty much only like at most like 3 degrees away from somebody else. Like I've probably worked with someone that Marty's worked with, but we both don't know it yet. But it probably has happened. We just don't know it yet. It's pretty small. Um, Always make friends in the industry. Don't make enemies ever in this industry. It is way too small. Pay everything forward, and everything will usually come back to you at some point. Be a mensch, like overall, just be a nice person, and you will meet people because your friend wants you to meet them because there's a possibility there of mutual benefit. That's usually when it's going to happen. The other thing I would also say is never be afraid to reach out, because a lot of us, the most interesting thing, or at least the biggest benefit from the internet and social media, is that a lot of people, you can just at people on Twitter, and a lot of the times they will answer and say hi. Even people that you think never would, right? Like my friend who is wanted to like pivot from IT into like studio operations, just wrote an email to like Trip Hawkins, and he gets a reply back saying, "Hi, here are like some pieces of advice based on the story that you told me." And so, um, you know, the internet has taught like popular people, I want to say popular, but like key figures, that it is important to reply to every single one of these, and that's what we do at studios too, right? We will answer every fan letter because every person that is a fan deserves at least that much for us to the care that we're going to, they bothered enough to write it and send it. You should bother enough to write back, so most people will. That is how you network.
It's good to know. Okay, so a little bit of a side note. I know that there's been the Overwatch cats, but I just wanted to introduce this cat who was scratching me the entire time of this networking portion, and I really was trying, but I just had to call her out because no. And now she's going to go run away and scratch whatever. So, Overwatch League has nothing on area effect here. Just saying. I'm kidding. There's some people that work in Overwatch League that are a part of this. But anyways, moving on to your next question, not cat related. How do you challenge yourself to continually grow? You've been in this industry for a while, so what are some strategies that you use to make sure that you're not being complacent?
That's a tough question.
Or do you? Or are you okay with being complacent?
if
I-
no one else okay, go.
Go ahead. I was gonna.
Yeah, so I think about this question a lot, and I unfortunately get pretty lazy sometimes and want to play World of Warcraft for weeks at a time. Um, but constantly thinking about my future goals. Think about, am I currently happy right now? And that's kind of that's something that I've always done even before I was in the games industry. I was like, am I happy with my current position? Could I be happier, or is there something that I want more? And constantly answering that. And I don't think about it constantly, but it's something that I think about often. And something that I always make myself do is I try to do global game jam every year. That's another place to stretch my design legs, my programming stuff, and just kind of do something that's not really work related. And trying to find a way to get out of my comfort zone is something that I want to say I do a lot, but I do it only sometimes. um, yeah, and I think about those things from time to time, and then play lots more World of Warcraft.
It's a good balance, making sure that you don't get burnt out and get some fun with games while you're working in games too.
Yeah, no, it's constantly challenging yourself or making sure that there's forward momentum is actually something that is really tricky. And some people, they get to a certain level and they're happy with where they're at, right? One of the things that has been incredible for me is having managers and leaders who keep you responsible. And in my opinion, one of the best traits of a manager is somebody who you can ask, like, "Hey, how am I doing?" What, and they'll answer, "You're doing great. You could be doing more." Right. And here's how you could do more. It's your choice if you want to or not. I think actually the person who gave me the advice I brought up before is my former CEO, who I think is in chat right now. And she's the person who, will say like, "Hey, Zach, here's what you're doing. There's like 20 other things the company needs, and you need me taking 5 of them." And just having that person in your life who will say like, you're doing a few things, you could be doing more, is incredibly useful. And then also when you're looking at the size and scope of your role, the smaller company you're at or the smaller team you're at, the more opportunity there is for taking on more opportunity, taking on more challenges. Right? I was at a 2-person company before, and if there's ever anything an engineer would be responsible for, it'd be me. And if I said I don't know how to do it, the response is, "Too bad, you're going to do it." Right? So the smaller team size you're on, the more you're just going to have to challenge yourself, or you're going to find someone else to do it.
Really, really good question. I think if you look back and there's I can't remember. I think he was like the CEO of Oracle or whatever. I can't remember. There's this little bit where he says that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. One are bullets. Some are bullets. The others are barrels. And most people are bullets, and barrels are few and far between. Because in an organization, you need these people that are barrels who are going to grab all the other bullets and fire them down the right direction and make them work, right? And like, to actually make a product, these are like your business leaders, your product managers, your, product owners who are going to be able to grab everybody and move them along. So, to stay motivated and become that bullet and not be complacent, I think a lot of it just boils down to interest and whether the thing that you're doing is going to be something that is going to keep you up at night all the time. And I'm sure both Marty and Zach have the thing that keeps them up at night when they're trying to solve a problem and they can't sleep because they're like, I want to solve this, right? So find what that is and keep doing that. And I think that's actually where you're actually going to find like the most success. My weird software specialty is like automation and optimization, and I will finish work and go home and still like while I am like in bed yet another sleepless night trying to think of what I did and whether it needs to be optimized more or not. I think uh, that constant drive is probably where why I ended up exactly here. It's the I always need a problem to solve, and I will be looking for problems in the company to solve, much as like 5 months later after I've solved the problem, I'll go back and revisit that problem to go, was that the right library to use? Did this library already get updated? Can I get X% more performance out of it than is it as performant as it needs to be? Revisit all the time. So yeah, that's how I maintain and trying not be complacent. It's by being continuously annoyed at a problem that I still need to try and solve.
Yep, always keep it moving forward. If there's problems just be solved still, then that's how you not be complacent. So we're gonna go back to like the title of the panel. What is something or one of the things that you wish that you knew at the beginning of your career?
I think that one of the things that I kind of had to figure out as I was going was, like I said very early on, I felt like I knew what I wanted my career to be, and clearly I didn't. Right? Otherwise, I'd be working at a cybersecurity firm. So one of the things that I kind of implicitly figured out is just do the next right thing, like Frozen, right? Figure out what's the next right step for you, and it could be next week I'm going to learn a cloud provider software, or maybe next month I'm going to leave the game industry, go do something else, follow my interest somewhere else, right? As you like I said before, as you build trust and as you build skill, you'll be able to make more decisions with your career, right? And the next 5 years might not be super clear, but the next 2 months, maybe the next year, you'll have options, right? And you'll be able to decide, maybe I'm going to try something new, or maybe I'm going to drill into what I'm really enjoying right now. So planning is great, but short-term planning, I'd say, is also probably more important than really long-term planning as far as career goes.
So for me personally, I think I would want to learn some more fundamental C++ stuff. I don't exactly know how to reverse a binary search tree, and apparently that's important. Um, so, but as more like general advice, it's when I was first applying to companies, I applied to like all my favorite companies, like really big AAA stuff, and got rejected from much of them. That felt really bad. That felt like, oh man, I'm not good enough, or like this really sucks. And then when I started working for 343, I kind of saw like a little bit behind the behind the curtain of what goes on in a hiring process, and it's really complicated. There's so many there's so many stakeholders, there's so many people who interview, and there's so much red tape and bureaucracy that like most of the time, and like so I also saw this in like small indie studios as well. Like when I worked in my first indie studio out in New York, we put out a position for it was like an intern position, and we got I think we got upwards of like 400 applications in like a week, and we weren't that big. We were pretty well known in New York, but like we weren't that like popular or anything or like widespread. And you'll get you'll you'll get passed on for a role, or you'll get passed on for something for, I want to say, like 60% of the time it's nothing to do with you or you personally. It's like either red tape. I've seen stuff like, oh, we made this position, it was like really meant for someone internal, but we just had to put it out there. And I've seen things like, um oh, we're basically, I know you applied, but like we're already like wrapping up this process with like somebody else, and it's like, we're just gonna go with them since we're already done with the process. There's so much. It's Finding a job is really hard, and try not to take it personally.
I would like to add to Marty's thing there a little bit. As having been a hiring manager for many positions over the years, when those 400 or 500 applications come in, believe it or not, that sometimes the hiring manager has a KPI, key performance indicator of how quickly they have to decide whether to move forward with a candidate or not, and get them like basically sorted in the queue. So I was receiving probably like 30 applications a day, and within that day I had to a metric that I had to decide that is this person going in the forward pile or the reject pile. And it is very, very hard to see 30 of those a day and go uh, yes, no. And then if I waited it on it too long, I had another manager who would come up to me and go like, why are you taking so long? It's like, oh, damn it. So yeah, it does happen that way. It is there are very many reasons, and there are a lot of poor souls in that process to get somebody hired. For me personally, what I wish I knew, um, like now that after so many years, it would be one of the earliest things that you I think you can do for yourself in your career is like two things: know how to sell and know how to negotiate, because those are like fundamental skills that will pay forward in your career and in your life over and over and over again. Um, Especially things like, if you're applying for a position, what are you trying to do, right? You're trying to sell yourself to a brand new employer. Um, when it comes, and then the salary negotiation that is part of that. As you move later up in your career, part of leading your team is being able to sell your vision to the rest of your team. Or if you're newer, you're basically, the Vax Trust circle here is basically selling the idea that you are, that circle of trust, or that like process of getting someone to trust you is a sell.
Mhm.
So
Saying that you are worth that amount of money.
or that amount of money, or you are worth the trust or the responsibility, or for someone to take a gamble on you, because when someone promotes you, they're putting their job on the line for you, right? So you have to sell that to them. We're going to say this, okay, I'll put you up for promotion, but if you look bad, you're gonna make me look bad too. So don't fuck it up. Um, so yeah, like I think like everything boils down to like learning how to sell. And if you know how to sell, then when it comes to you trying to become stinking rich or filthy rich, let's say, a lot of that is selling, right? If you think those giant companies that get massive amounts of capital, 20 million, 25 million from a Series A, what was the CEO's job? His job was to go out and sell, right? To grab an investor that's going to believe in his vision for $25 million for 20% of the company. That is like learn how to sell. It's what I really wish I knew how to do early on. I still don't.
Just to follow up on both the point of learning how to sell and also the hiring process. I was actually hiring very recently, and one of the ways you can really stand out on your resume is make it easy to understand that you make it easy to say yes, right? If you're applying for a position, the first few words of near the top should tell the hiring manager or the recruiter, yes, you have the skills, or yes, you're right for this position. Right. So resume should not be wordy, really. Action verbs, a lot of the general resume advice, make it really easy to read and understand that, you're right for the role.
Sure. And do you all have any recommendations about people to follow to be inspired about the gaming industry? Besides yourselves, we're going to follow you too, of course.
I've got two blogs that I absolutely love. So the first one was very early on from Naughty Dog, is their developer logs from building Crash Bandicoot. Less so for getting into the game industry, but kind of the stories they tell and the types of experiences you're going to have. It's not as bad as it was then, obviously, but I think those are absolutely interesting. And then the second one that I really like isn't game industry specific, but it's Joel on Software. He writes a lot about just what it's like being in the software industry, and he's worked his way up through his career, and he has plenty of experience kind of all up and down the industry.
I don't follow anyone in particular, just maybe like some of the bigger notable indie game designers like Rami Ismail or something like that. But like again, not related to getting into the industry, but Riot runs an engineering blog. And those are always super interesting to read about like the kinds of problems that you solve on a AAA game and how they solve them. It's cool to read.
It's funny. I think Zach follows Joel Spolsky. I also follow Coding Horror, Jeff Atwood. So they're basically like friends in a pair. So there's that. I also I mean they're. If you're really interested in the industry, like I'm gonna do a shameless plug here. Please follow Ryan Clark, who does the Clark Tank and does all these videos about the game industry and the business in general. There, who else would I follow? Those are probably my two main ones, and that I would think like, hey, if you really want to get to know the industry, there's also a lot of people who are really good to follow if you're really interested in like a software engineering side of things, like probably Mike Acton and Krista Erickson, who are people who are way more experienced than me at software engineering and have were responsible for a lot of the success at Insomniac and the Sony Santa Monica God of War teams. They're very prolific in engineering circles. So once you start following one of these people, it'll just spider into like everybody else that also they follow. So start there, but that's only from a software engineering perspective. Like anything else, like I wouldn't know.
And then for people that are not interested in engineering or have other types of interests, I know personally that there are several just general people like Jeff Knightley, all big figures like that who just kind of like cover the gaming industry as a whole, and those are good starting points, and see who they follow, see who important people follow, and just go there, especially on Twitter. So we are at the end of this panel. So where can people follow you? Give us your plug. We want to know more about what you're doing in the future.
I'm not super active on social media or anything, but you can, if you're a recruiter who also wants to send me a message that I might not read, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, similarly, I'm not very active on social media. You can find me, you can feel free to DM me on Twitter. My name it's at Zachary Mermans, just my name. Similarly, if you message me on LinkedIn, if you want to do like resume review or I don't know, just talk tech or talk games, totally fine. Message me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Oh wow, I'm gonna do the whole triad here. Since I'm also not very active on social media, I have like abysmal amount of followers, but it is at James W Chan. Feel free to reach out if I can help anytime. I'm always happy to answer questions, or if I can help point you in the right direction. I do a lot of talks now about like how to like run a game business, because going from like a developer to actually running a business is like those are two totally different jobs. One has nothing to do with the other. And it's a lot of the stuff that we learned the hard way at Yacht Club Games, and me just going through the other things, stuff that you all like aspiring studio founders want to know, things, super boring things like taxes and how to deal with it. Yeah, it's very helpful. You don't want to learn this the hard way, like after you already started your company.
Well, you heard it, chat, and I know that there are some questions for this panel that we didn't get to, so make sure to DM those questions to our lovely panelists. And thank you so much for you all for being here and to share your knowledge with the rest of us beginning folk, as I'll say. Thank you so much. And before we come to commercial break, I would like to remind you that we are still taking donations for our causes. Black Girls Code 2040, and Direct Relief on Tiltify, where you can register for the chance to win some awesome prizes. Be sure to check out the information below on our stream, hit command, donate, and check out our Discord to find out more how you can get involved. And also a quick shout out to our sponsors, Almid. Almid Red supports nationally sponsored community, collegiate, and convention esports events across the US since 2015. Their esports teams are also currently ranked D1, top 10 in North America field. And Corsair, the leading global developer and manufacturer of high-performance gear and technology for gamers, content creator, and PC enthusiasts. And last but not least, TestFub, the largest collegiate network of college students, competitors, and club leaders across North America. And all of these sponsors are some great ways to maybe apply and use some of the skills that you learned in this panel. So thank you all for stopping by, and we're going to cut to commercial. Bye-bye!